now conservatively reach 20 million people a week, one way or another, through our broadcast radio, TV, print media, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. And we're only one independent group promoting true libertarian, pro-Western ideas worldwide. Unfortunately, the ideas of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment are not being promoted by the West, but a neo-colonialism with an attempt to establish neo-feudalism, and that's in the Club of Rome's own words, is being established to bring in neo-feudalistic fascism in their own words. And daily, I read globalresearch.org. They also carry some of our work from Paul Joseph Watson and others. And the head of it is Michael Chossudovsky. He's a award-winning author, professor of economics at the University of Ottawa, founder and director of the Center for Research on Globalization, Montreal, and editor of the Global Research CA website. He's the author of Globalization of Poverty and the New World Order, 2003, and America's War on Terrorism, 2005. His most recent book is entitled Towards World War III Scenario, The Dangers of Nuclear War. I want to talk about that with him. That was from 2011, predicting what we're now seeing. He is the contributor to the Encyclopedia Britannica. His writings have been published in more than 20 languages, globalresearch.org. So, Professor Chossudovsky, good to have you back on. It's been a few years. A lot is happening, and I want to cover the waterfront and look at this MH17 as the Rosetta Stone to understand the policy of false flag or created crises that's being used as war rhetoric to expand these proxy wars, and to get your breakdown on where you believe it's going next. Because reading your writings, out of everybody out there, you have predicted with a lot of precision what's been unfolding with the proxy armies of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, what's been unfolding in the proxy wars headed up by Soros and others. So thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm delighted to be on the program, Alex, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss and debate these important issues. What we have attempted to do is to address the facts of Malaysian Airlines crash, and I think in that regard we share in a sense a counter consensus that the facts have been manipulated, that the mainstream media is giving us a version which just doesn't stand up, that the Obama administration is accusing Moscow without a shred of evidence, and now we have a lot more information. We have declarations from the Russian military. We have also we have talking points in U.S. intelligence. We have satellite images and so on. And I think we have to establish what the facts are. And I'm going to go to, in fact, declarations which were made by Malaysian Airlines. I've been going back and forth to Malaysia for the last 7 or 8 years. I know people. I know the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister of the country, including the head of Malaysian Airlines. But this is a statement that they made right at the outset, and they did. First of all, they did confirm that MH17, when they entered Ukraine airspace, they were immediately instructed to fly at a lower altitude. The normal cruising speed is 35,000 feet. As we know, the legal, let's say the legal limit is 32. They were pushed down to 33. But then we also had information that this was provided by Russian sources, but there were also eyewitness reports to the fact that there was one Ukraine fighter plane which was spotted very close to the aircraft, in fact, within a 5-kilometer distance, and one would suspect that this aircraft was, in a sense, escorting MH17 in a commercial aircraft corridor. I should mention, that's very important, is that the Ukraine fighter jet, Su-25 fighter, equipped with the R-60 missiles, was detected within 5 to 10 kilometers of the Malaysian aircraft, according to Russian sources, in a corridor which is reserved for commercial aircraft. So that, in effect, we've got a lot of information to the effect that that the flight was actually MH17, which normally cruises over the Sea of Azov, like many other flights, in a southerly direction. And all previous days, and that was revealed by other sources, in all previous days, the flight path was over the Sea of Azov, very much removed from the war zone. And on that particular day, July 17th, the flight path went directly over the war zone. That is something which is fairly well established. But we have other information regarding the deployment of Buk anti-aircraft missiles, ground-air missiles in Ukraine by the Ukrainian armed forces. And the other side of the story is well, the other side of the story is that Russia is not behind it. We cannot make any clear assessments without without an investigation. This was a criminal act. So there has to be a criminal investigation.
Sure. And if folks just joined us, Professor Michelle Chossudovsky joins us, a geopolitical expert, especially on things happening in Europe and with Russia in the whole Caucasus, Crimea area. But expanding on this with you, I want to get your larger view on the geopolitical ramifications. Clearly, we saw Kerry last year say we have to strike Syria right now or they could nuke us in an hour, just like Tony Blair saying 40 minutes we can be nuked by Saddam. It's total proof they launched the chemical attack, and then it came out even with the UN and MIT that it was the rebels and the Saudi Arabians, and it was Infowars.com and globalresearch.ca that was leading the research on that. So when you have parties that have been caught doing this over and over again, you have Russia not standing to gain by shooting down a country that they're on good relations with and do heavy trade. And when you have the plane being diverted for whatever reason through an area that no other aircraft were in, where the Ukrainians have been bombing people, then you have them saying only the Russian rebels had these anti-aircraft missiles, and there's AP photos and videos of the rebels with the missiles on the AP's website. It's not like this is Russian propaganda. I mean, look, I just go where the truth is. If Russia was behind this, I'd come out and say Russia's behind it. Looks like a mistake because they don't stand to gain from it. But it leans towards, as wicked as the West has gotten, and now the Russians releasing the radar tracking of these other aircraft, and NATO and the U.S. won't release theirs and won't release the satellites, and Ukraine's blocked the air traffic control tapes. I mean, we've got to think they might have blown it up themselves on purpose. I mean, they're that bad. I was thinking maybe they diverted it into there, hoping it would get shot down, and then it's a tragedy. But you got to ask who sent it, Professor. And again, I'm not trying to be a cheerleader for Russia, but I'm sorry. The truth and the evidence points towards the State Department lying about this.
Well, I think your comments are right head on, because the comparison with Syria and the chemical weapons hoax is now proven to be correct. Namely, that it was the rebels that had the chemical weapons, and Bashar al-Assad was blamed for having chemical weapons. And that even led to a UN intervention, which then subsequently led to the dismantling of those chemical weapons. Incidentally, the chemical weapons have been shipped to southern Italy and then the hands of the Calabrese mafia. That's something people don't know, and they're going to be sold on the secondary market. But to get back to the issue of blaming Russia, where, it's not like simply blaming Mongolia or blaming Burkina Faso. What they're doing is they're blaming a country which has vast military capabilities, nuclear weapons, a very sophisticated intelligence apparatus, which sometimes people forget. We're certainly not building an apology for the Russian Federation. What our concern is to reveal the truth. But I should mention that yesterday, President Vladimir Putin made a statement. It's a very balanced statement. We're not building an apology for the Russian president, but what he said, he said the West is building scenarios which could potentially, quote, destabilize the existing world order. And he is concerned because those scenarios threatens Russia's sovereignty. And he's also referring to NATO buildup on the border, the so-called missile defense shield, which he says correctly isn't a defensive deployment. He's talking about the ABM system. We are at extremely dangerous crossroads in world history, and we have to rein in the insanity, the sheer insanity of our politicians, and not only in the United States. Our Canadian Prime Minister, same, and that also applies. Let's say it also applies to what's going on in Israel, where people are being killed, and it's not a question of saying who we are in favor or against. It's acknowledging the truth. 600 people are killed in Gaza, and now the Wall Street Journal says, well, it's all right to kill them because they're subhumans and they control they support Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. But the problem is that the mainstream media at this stage has gone into overdrive. It is no longer involved in so-called classical media lies. It is involved in odious statements which justify the killing of civilians. And that is true it's true in Palestine, it's true in Syria, it's true in Ukraine. I have been analyzing the nature of the conflict in the Donbass region, which haven't been reported. The Ukraine Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Homeland Security, so to speak, revealed data. It was leaked. That was about a week ago. And they have acknowledged that there have been 1,600 soldiers, National Guard and armed forces, which have been killed in action. I use their words, killed in action in the Donbass region.
Oh, yeah, they bragged last week that they had killed in 2 days. They claimed 1,000 rebels with their fighter bombers in eastern Ukraine. But then we saw the footage. It was just smoking neighborhoods. So there just looks like they're just bombing neighborhoods.
Well, I think there are different sources of data coming from different entities of the Ukrainian state apparatus. But what I was referring to
was their soldiers, and that's a lot.
It's their soldiers which have been decimated. They've killed. They acknowledged the civilian deaths. They've killed a lot of people, more than 500 or 600 according to their figures.
Yeah, they say 600.
The problem is that there we have a major war theater. When 1,600 soldiers are killed, we're not talking about a small crisis we're talking about a theater war.
And that's my next question to you. That's my next question to you. There's a delusional disconnect. Even soldiers like Hitler and Napoleon made miscalculations and attacked Russia. But I look at Obama, I look at the guys even at the Rand Corporation, I look at the West, and they literally put out white papers how we can survive a nuclear war. Brzezinski talks about how they're going to encircle and bring down Russia. They've got color revolutions inside Russia trying to overthrow it. I mean, let's just say Putin's a bad guy, which I'm not even saying. But just for the argument, still, we're starting it. Our leaders are starting it and poking a bear with nuclear weapons. And then Russia's not backing down. And I'm afraid our elites are so delusional with their red carpets and having sex with Hollywood stars that they're so decadent, Professor, that this is the kind of leadership you get that ends up causing a huge disaster.
Well, I think, Alex, that the issue is that these people ultimately believe their own propaganda. And I've been analyzing the nuclear weapons doctrine for over 10 years. since they reclassified nuclear weapons as conventional, as, let's say, they said tactical nuclear weapons can be used in the conventional warfare theater because, quote, according to scientific opinion, they are harmless to the surrounding civilian population. And so that a three-star general in the U.S. Central Command can place the order, let's use them, they're part of the military toolbox, and they're harmless to civilians, they constitute a humanitarian bomb. Now, I can say, without any doubt, if there's nuclear confrontation, whether it is with Russia or with Iran, because Iran has been threatened off and on in the course of the last 12 years, if there is the use of a preemptive nuclear strike, we are in a World War III scenario, and we have to. I think the main culprit of this World War III scenario. Of course, we can blame the Pentagon, we can blame the White House, but without the propaganda machine, without the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and CNN and the Council on Foreign Relations, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Well, I think they have no conscience. Like Karl Rove said, we control reality. We're history's actors now. And I see statements like that out of the White House today. I agree with you. I think they're disconnected and have megalomania.
Well, the nuclear wars is the last war that we'll have in our history. It is a war which will destroy humanity. I think that's fairly well understood. Okay, it was predicted by Einstein many years back.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new InfoWars Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Hey, now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
Professor Michelle Chossudovsky is our guest, globalresearch.ca. In closing, in the 6 minutes we've got here, sir, long term is where I'm really worried about this turning into nuclear war, but we almost saw it back on 888 with the whole staged event in Georgia, which turned out to be a hoax. Then I got up and CNN said that Russia had invaded Georgia, but then they later admitted days later, well, actually, when the Georgian troops attacked the Russian-held Ossetia and other areas, South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And even I, that first day, was saying, how dare Russia attack, because I couldn't believe CNN would just totally lie, the clown news network. They have a poll out on CNN where 10% of Americans, it's actually 11%, want to have war with Russia. Well, that means nuclear war. And I just don't understand the total disconnect. What are your biggest concerns concerning nuclear war? And then in closing, what are ideas for détente and to try to reverse this?
Well, Alex, I think, first of all, this whole notion that we're in a new Cold War is a fallacy. The Cold War had certain, had certain mechanisms of consultation and dialogue. There was diplomacy. There were safeguards. Nuclear war was considered, or nuclear weapons was considered the weapon of last resort. under the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. But following the 2002 Senate decision, these nuclear weapons can be used in the conventional war theater, and they do not require the consent of the commander-in-chief, namely the President of the United States. Now, we are in an extremely dangerous situation because the decision makers are not, as I said, decision makers are also the victims of propaganda. It's not by accident that in the United States there were these top-off, terrorist warnings and exercises. Okay, they were. There's a procedure for top officials, but the top officials are being fed from within a whole series of lies and fabrications, not the ones that we read in the media. And they are being nurtured into believing their own lies. Okay, they're believing their own lies.
They call it echo chamber.
Well, for me, it's what I call it's the American Inquisition. Okay, it's a bit like the Spanish or French Inquisition with nuclear weapons. But I mean, everybody agrees with the Spanish Inquisition. Even if the lies are there, you say, okay, the lies, too bad for the lies in the New York Times and the State Department. We still support the Spanish Inquisition. In this case, it's the American Inquisition. It's an inquisitorial doctrine whereby you don't necessarily need to hide your lies anymore. You just say, well, you better accept the lies because that's the truth. Okay, and realities are turned upside down. We could call it Orwellian, but it goes even beyond that. And the problem is that any kind of scientific analysis will tell you that the use of nuclear weapons on a so-called preemptive basis will lead to World War III. Yet our decision makers don't seem to understand that. But at the same time, the defense contractors are complicit, because I recall, and it's in my book, that it was on the 7th or 8th or the 6th of August 2003, the Pentagon, together with the big defense contractors, Lockheed Martin et al., they met at Strategic Command Headquarters in Nebraska, and on the purpose of this meeting was the development of the nuclear weapons industry.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
We got 5 more minutes with Professor Michel Chossudovsky, globalresearch.org. And he was getting into meetings. I remember when these meetings happened, they started being coming out in the newspapers. That, using nukes, tactical ones, on a routine basis, use them against Iran, use them in Iraq, use them in Afghanistan, it's no big deal. Kind of like leaking reactors are now no big deal. And it shows a real nihilistic disconnect in my view. So I was asking him about this real danger, and he said, yes, if you just joined us, this is worse than the Cold War because the red telephones aren't being used. And now the West is promoting a survivable war with Russia. And it's not good because it's driving Russia and China together. I really see the soft power of America being lost. And I'm very sad for my country because this is all being done in our name. But as you said, NATO and Europe's going along with it. Is this just a real sign of serious decadence?
Well, I think it's a sign. Well, let me put it in broader terms. Lying is a money-making proposition. People who lie make money. People who produce nuclear weapons make money. It is a profit-driven military agenda which could lead to the destruction of humanity. Without the incentive to make money out of this, the world would be much more sane, because the scientists were hired by the Pentagon to say that nuclear weapons are harmless to the surrounding civilian population. I have the documents on file. Okay, the big defense contractors meet behind closed doors with the Pentagon at Strategic Command Headquarters in Nebraska in August 2003. And 3, to commemorate the Hiroshima bombing, okay, on the same day. To commemorate, not to say we're sorry, we did it, but to say we're going to commemorate that with a view to developing more nuclear weapons so that nuclear weapons are good for business. You can look at the multi-billion contracts to build these nuclear weapons, not to mention the fighter jets that go with it, etc., and which literally involve a very heavy cost to U.S. taxpayers because virtually everything else is wiped out.
I want to spend a minute and a half, sir, on solutions. I mean, how are things going for the globalist, and what are some solutions?
Well, I mean, to discuss solutions at this stage is complex, but I think we have to target the mainstream media. We have to dismantle the media propaganda which sustains this agenda, because that is their legitimacy. If they don't have it, they can't lie on their own. They need the New York Times, they need the Wall Street Journal, and that is why I think independent alternative media is so important. It's the media battle which is ultimately crucial, and I think that anti-war activists have to broaden their thrust. They have to network across the land, throughout the United States, irrespective of political cleavages. Join hands, examine the truth, examine the facts, and make up your own mind. But essentially, we have to dismantle the mainstream media and its fabrications, as well as its odious discourse, which we've heard in recent days, which says that, in fact, it doesn't really matter if we torture people or whether we kill them. Those people are subhuman and they are terrorists. And in fact, incidentally, the Ukrainian ambassador of the United States, on his website of the embassy, they actually said that ethnic Russians in Ukraine were subhuman and they have to be killed.
I saw that. Professor, thank you so much. The InfoWars crew absolutely loves coffee because we love being awake. And I am somewhat of a connoisseur of coffee. So many times you go to a restaurant or even to a coffee shop and the coffee tastes like garbage. And in all the different coffees I've tried, my favorite is grown in the high mountains, in shade, Arabica, on the border with Guatemala in southern Mexico by the Chiapas farmers. I make sure we've done the research. I make sure it's the very best product that we can offer you when I put my name on it. And I believe, and it's my taste, so you may differ, that this is the best coffee in the world from southern Mexico. Wake Up America Patriot Blend, 100% organic, Arabica shade grown. And then we have the Immune Support, 100% organic coffee, infused with a special type of mushroom known to boost the immunity.
This coffee is seriously so smooth. I normally have to douse my coffee with cream and sugar and cinnamon and all kinds of tasty treats, but this, I drink this black. It is so good.
Well, that's why I like it, is that it has a kick, it has really good caffeine in it, it has a good clean wake up that lasts for a long time, doesn't give me a headache, but it's so smooth, it's so delicious. Just try it out for yourself. I'm telling you, this is my favorite coffee. We went through a lot of trouble to bring you this. Just try it, and I think you'll be hooked like we are here at InfoWars. Well, folks, find out for yourself and support the information war today. It's all available at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.